in the cabin of the idler that I first heard Blow the Man Down, Flying Cloud, and Whiskey, Johnny Whiskey. Oh, it was brave. I was beginning to grasp the meaning of life. Here was no commonplace, no Oakland estuary, no weary round of throwing newspapers at front doors, delivering ice, and setting up ninepins. All the world was mine. All its paths were under my feet, and John Barleycorn, tricking my fancy, enabled me to anticipate the life of adventure for which I yearned. We were not ordinary. We were three tipsy young gods, incredibly wise, gloriously genial, and without limit to our powers. Ah, and I say it now after the years, could John Barleycorn keep one at such a height, I should never draw a sober breath again. But this is not a world of free freights. One pays according to an iron schedule. For every strength, the balanced weakness. For every high, a corresponding low. For every fictitious godlike moment, an equivalent time in reptilian slime. For every feat of telescoping long days and weeks of life into mad, magnificent instants, one must pay with shortened life and oft-times with savage usury added. Intenseness and duration are as ancient enemies as fire and water. They are mutually destructive. They cannot coexist. And John Barleycorn, mighty necromancer though he be, is as much a slave to organic chemistry as we mortals are. We pay for every nerve marathon we run. Nor can John Barleycorn intercede and fend off the just payment. He can lead us to the heights, but he cannot keep us there, else would we all be devotees. And there is no devotee but pays for the mad dances John Barleycorn pipes. Yet the foregoing is all in after wisdom spoken. It was no part of the knowledge of the lad, 14 years old, who sat in the idler's cabin between the harpooner and the sailor, the air rich in his nostrils with the musty smell of men's sea gear, roaring in chorus, "Yankee ship come down de ribber, pull, my bully boys, pull." We grew maudlin, and all talked and shouted at once. I had a splendid constitution, a stomach that would digest scrap iron, and I was still running my marathon in full vigour when Scotty began to fail and fade. His talk grew incoherent. He groped for words and could not find them, while the ones he found his lips were unable to form. His poisoned consciousness was leaving him. The brightness went out of his eyes, and he looked as stupid as were his efforts to talk. His face and body sagged as his consciousness sagged. A man cannot sit upright save by an act of will. Scotty's reeling brain could not control his muscles, and his correlations were breaking down. He strove to take another drink and feebly dropped the tumbler on the floor. Then, to my amazement, weeping bitterly, he rolled into a bunk on his back and immediately snored off to sleep. The harpooner and I drank on, grinning in a superior way to each other over Scotty's plight. The last flask was opened, and we drank it between us to the accompaniment of Scotty's stertorous breathing. Then the harpooner faded away into his bunk, and I was left alone, unthrown on the field of battle. I was very proud, and John Barleycorn was proud with me. I could carry my drink. I was a man. I had drunk two men, drink for drink, into unconsciousness. And I was still on my 2 feet, upright, making my way on deck to get air into my scorching lungs. It was in this bout on the Idler that I discovered what a good stomach and a strong head I had for drink. A bit of knowledge that was to be a source of pride in succeeding years, and that ultimately I was to come to consider a great affliction. The fortunate man is the one who cannot take more than a couple of drinks without becoming intoxicated. The unfortunate wight is the one who can take many glasses without betraying a sign, who must take numerous glasses in order to get the kick. The sun was setting when I came on the Idler's deck. There were plenty of bunks below. I did not need to go home. But I wanted to demonstrate to myself how much I was a man. There lay my skiff astern. The last of a strong ebb was running out in channel in the teeth of an ocean breeze of 40 miles an hour. I could see the stiff white caps, and the suck and run of the current was plainly visible in the face and trough of each one. I set sail, cast off, took my place at the tiller, the sheet in my hand, and headed across channel. The skiff heeled over and plunged into it madly. The spray began to fly. I was at the pinnacle of exultation. I sang "Blow the Man Down" as I sailed. I was no boy of 14 living the mediocre ways of the sleepy town called Oakland. I was a man, a god, and the very elements rendered me allegiance as I bidded them to my will. The tide was out. A full 100 yards of soft mud intervened between the boat wharf and the water. I pulled up my centreboard, ran full tilt into the mud, took in sail, and standing in the stern, as I had often done at low tide, I began to shove the skiff with an oar. It was then that my correlations began to break down. I lost my balance and pitched head foremost into the ooze. Then, and for the first time, as I floundered to my feet, covered with slime, the blood running down my arms from a scrape against a barnacled stake, I knew that I was drunk. But what of it? Across the channel, 2 strong sailormen lay unconscious in their bunks where I had drunk them. I was a man. I was still on my legs, if they were knee-deep in mud. I disdained to get back into the skiff. I waded through the mud, shoving the skiff before me and yammering the chant of my manhood to the world. I paid for it. I was sick for a couple of days, meanly sick, and my arms were painfully poisoned from the barnacle's